So let me transition again here to another thing. I want to talk about some different models that exist in the market, or that can happen. You know, when we think about, all right, how is this really all going to work as an industry? You know, I can only come up with three models here. All right, there is the one company is going to provide you everything model, where you put your data into their system, and they're going to provide you the data collection tools, the nitrogen rack, the seed rack, the imagery services, and so on and so forth. And hey, if they could pull that off, that'd be a great model, right? It's simple as can be. You put your data in one place, you get everything you ever dreamed of, you're happy, screw integration and all that, you don't have to mess with it, right? But the reality is they probably can't do that. I mean, the guy that's really good at nitrogen rack's probably not the one that's the best at the seeding rack piece or whatever the other thing is, right? And also, you're going to end up in a cookie-cutter situation like this, which is the last thing you ag retailers want. Right? I mean, if I know one thing about you guys, you want to differentiate. You want to be in control of your own product and destiny and so on, and getting put into a position where everybody's selling the same thing in your market is not good for you. All right. Well, what's another model? Another model is where everybody puts up an API and we all share data back and forth with one another, right? And this is the model that's really being touted and that we're seeing people go down of, okay, I'm going to use Summit and put field boundaries in and get Lime P and K Rex, and I'm going to send the boundaries over to Climate Corp and get a nitrogen model, and then I'm going to send it over to Deere through their API to apply the nitrogen. I'm going to send data from Summit to Raven to go apply the Lime P and K. What's wrong with that, right? That didn't sound too bad. But it gets more complicated. You know, if you think, well, it's 4 companies, that's not that bad. But what about when it's 10 or 12? It gets really messy. And the reality is it's a lot worse than this. You know, there's a lot of these companies out there that we're going to want to interact with. And if the model is, hey, each one of these companies is going to stand up an API, and then all the other companies are going to implement that API, and then we're all going to move data back and forth, this is an absolute cluster, you know what I'm saying? This won't work, right? Let me give you an example. So just think about, you've got a field boundary, 125-acre field boundary, you put it in, you go, you send that to all the other applications that you're working with. And that 125-acre field boundary exists everywhere, and that's great. And then the farmer comes in one day and says, hey, that's not right. It's actually this shape. Let's edit that boundary. Now it's this 122-acre boundary. So you did that in SST products. Now you got to get it to all these products, all right? How are you going to do that? I mean, you're going to go through all these APIs and push it to the several different things, and you may think, well, I'm not going to have that many products to deal with, but you've got a bunch of farmers. They're all working with different products that you have to engage with. You've got overlapping players in the market that are stakeholders on that farm you got to deal with. There will be a lot of systems here. You're going to end up where you've got this boundary out here represented in many different forms across all of these systems, impossible to stay in sync. And then this is just a field boundary example. Let's talk about yield data. I mean, you get your yield data off your John Deere combine, you bring it in, you put it in our system, you put it in adapt-in system, you put it other places, and then you post-calibrate it in one. How do you get the post-calibration across all those systems? Right, how do you know your nitrogen model picked up the latest yield data that was available? Right? You don't. I mean, this is going to be difficult. And think about the money getting wasted on this. Everybody here has to have the same field boundary management. They need the same basic data and all of that, and yet they're all replicating the same base functionality. And then in this model, everybody still has proprietary formats. Everybody collects data differently. So as SST, we still have to integrate with all these guys. I mean, API moves it over the internet. doesn't solve the problem that we still have today, which is every piece of hardware puts out a different base file. The content, I mean, screw the format. I don't care if it's a shape file or whatever. The content inside the file is different, right? Some don't even put rates or units of measure with the rate, right? How do we, we spend all of our time trying to straighten all this crap out. This doesn't make it better. This makes it worse. This just piles data up faster. So let's go on to what we're doing here, which is synchronization, not just integration. All right? It is a central data repository where in that center circle, a user has an account. And all of their data goes into that one account. And when they want it to be available to adapt-in for a nitrogen model, they grant adapt-in access to it. And adapt-in can synchronize with the central repository, get the latest data, execute their logic, create this nitrogen rec, and they can conform that nitrogen rec to our standard and push it back into the user's account. And then when you're needing to pull that over into AgSync, guess what? They hit the central account, they pull over that nitrogen rec, they go apply it, they take the as-applied data, conform it to that standard, and push it back into one account. All right, this is the model that we're building. This is the next evolution beyond our current setup where, I talk about FarmRight being the central repository things are going to. Well, it needs to be bigger than just FarmRight and SST. It needs to be a system where we can let others leverage our data standards, leverage that common geospatial footprint, and offer new products and services on top of it. So this is where we're going. We're building out these APIs. And I shouldn't even say this is where we're going. This is where we are. It's actually, you're going to hear from 3 providers that have already implemented these APIs that are hooked to our system today. And there are several others that are there as well. And this is a reality where you put a grower, farm, and field boundary and data into our system, it's accessible to all these other tools. And when they make edits, they push back the edits into the central repository. All right? So this is an approach. This is the approach we're taking. Is it the industry approach? Well, I don't know. I mean, nobody wants any one company to provide, the platform, right, or the standard. It'd be a lot better if we could all get together, sing Kumbaya, come up with a set of standards, and have some independently managed thing that does all this. And we're trying, right? There's many examples of that happening, but there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too much competition at play. There's too many ignorant people that they're there because their boss told them to go to the meeting. They don't know why they're there, right? I mean, it's not working. So what we know is what we have works. It's tried and true. It's tested. We've had this basic framework underlying our system for more than a decade, and now we're exposing it to the market. We're saying, hey, we can't be everything to everyone. We realize that. So let's provide our standards in an open way. Let's provide APIs that let others bolt on and offer you the best of breed. And this is good for you. This lets you have choice. You can pick from, today we've got, I think 5 imagery providers, aerial imagery providers hooked to the system. We've got drone deploy hooked up to it, right? There's many ways to get imagery, and you don't have to all be doing the same thing. You can pick winners and losers. You can negotiate price with these people. We'll let the market sort out who the winners and losers are, not have SST or somebody trying to pick that for you. So I'm going to leave that discussion there. Todd's going to pick up on it later this afternoon and describe a little more in detail about AgX.